Hello and good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are located in this fine planet of ours. Welcome to another gaming podcast, and this is another Minisode. And today it's once again me and my fellow co-host, Alex, returning to the base. What's up, Alex?
Hey.
Don't sound so sad about what we're talking about tonight.
I'm not so sad as I'm just confused by what I experienced.
What you actually, your voice gives off some good impressions of some of the character dialogue in the game. Um, but yeah, we are actually doing a another mini-sode tonight, and it actually kind of something special for the whole month of October. Which by the time you hear this podcast, you would have already heard Alex his very own horror special podcast that came out that should be releasing the first week of October, the first weekend of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Alex, you probably had a blast doing it. A little bit something different from your for you, right? Like sitting down that long talking about something.
Yeah, I mean, like originally when I presented the idea to you, I was thinking like, I could do a YouTube video on this. And I was just thinking about it and I was sitting there and I was like, this is going to be way longer than 15, 20 minutes. And there's really no story to go with it. It was kind of just like me rambling. So I was like, all right, yeah, let's see how it goes. So I just wrote down some quick notes for myself. And then I thought to myself, you know what, even if I fumble around, it's quick to edit, which there are a
Yeah.
few. And, just kind of just going with the flow. And like listening back to it, like I was like, wow, this came out a lot better than I thought it was going to. But I left out a lot of stuff. There were so many there were so many more games that I thought of after the fact that I really liked
Yeah.
and like other things I could have talked about, but it's such a big topic.
It's huge.
I was like, all right, whatever. I got my little corner. Maybe if there's like a part 2 or something.
Well, what that inspired with Alex doing that, and by the time you hear this mini-sode on the game, we're going to talk about are the other ones may have already been released. But what we're going to plan on doing is I'm actually going to record a little special, a horror special of mine, which will release the following weekend. And hopefully, if Dustin and Chance are able to have the free time to record one, they're going to have their own solo episode each. So this month of October could be jam-packed with content for all of our listeners, kind of inspired by the theme of October and Halloween and horror and such. It seems like a lot of people do this every time in October. What it's something about the month of October and Halloween and horror that really gets people doing these kind of like specials and marathon things, ain't it?
No,
Like ABGN always did his Cinemassacre Monster Movie Madness. You do people do horror game specials throughout the month, and there's no really other month that can kind of do that.
no, and it's funny too though because that was also partially what inspired me to even do that solo one in the first place because I'm like, well, my whole feed is nothing but Halloween shit, and it's only September 30th. Like, so I'm like, I may as well get on the bandwagon because every year I try to play horror games this time of year because it's all, the orange and the black and the costumes. At least in New York, I mean, the weekend that we're recording right now is New York Comic Con, so there's people running around costume anyway, especially in my neighborhood, like because there's a bunch of youth hostels, so like a lot of international people, I guess they came in for it, or like they're all crowded around my train station. Um, but New York in particular, we have a lot of pop-up Halloween stores, so they're already open and people are buying costumes already. In the case of some of the drugstores, they already have the Christmas decorations up. They completely just skipped over Thanksgiving. But I don't know, it's just like this time of the year, at least for me, it's kind of mixed around with the way New York kind of moves, but
Yeah,
I've never been a Halloween person. Like, as a kid, I just like the trick or treating aspect. The whole dressing up thing never really appealed to me. But I find
yeah.
as I get older, I like to try to see what I missed out on by not really being a Halloween person. And every year I feel like I discover something more and something new, which is kind of like why I wanted to play the game that we're talking about today and even do like the mini episode as well.
Yeah, I've kind of fell into the same boat like as Halloween. I'd go trick or treat and stuff, but it wasn't the big deal. I mean, my favorite part was watching the TV specials that would come on every year where they would do like a month long worth of Halloween movies on TV and stuff. So that'd be the highlight for me. But as you get older, like going to Halloween parties and stuff, a little bit more fun than a Halloween party as a kid. So that's stuff that is cool making up. But I guess we can get into talking about the game though. Let's let these people know what we're talking about here. We kind of teased it with our last Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age minisode. I hope everyone enjoyed and listened to that. And from the feedback that Final Fantasy 12 is getting this time around, I think people are really enjoying it like we did. So that's good to know. But we said that it was going to be a From Software title, more of an obscure one that I know for one, I don't hear a lot of people ever talk about. I don't know about you, Alex, if you ever hear a lot of people talking about this game or not.
Oh, Armored Core? Nobody talks about Armored Core at all.
But in the theme of Halloween and the horror month, we decided to play Echo Night Beyond. A very interesting game. And I know, Alex, when you first purchased this game, oh, was it about a year ago now? You finally picked your copy up.
What was
I
it?
can't.
I think if I remember correctly, you told me about it. Like, 'cause it was around that time where you're like, after all the Dark Souls and stuff, you're like, man, I want to get every From Software game. And then when we went to too many games, you and Dustin got Kingsfield and I think Evergrace. And I'm
Yeah.
like looking at the back, I'm like, both these games look like absolute horseshit. But one of them that you had mentioned, you were like, oh, they did like a survival horror game called like Echo Night Beyond, and it was in space, and I was like, wait a minute, like this sounds kind of interesting. And then I looked it up, and it's like, I think at the time it was like $80 or
Yeah.
$100, pushing $100, and I was like, oh my god, this
Because
is.
you got your copy before me, so yeah,
I
you it
found your
was
copy.
expensive. Yeah, you found my copy and sent it to me, and it was not $80, people. Like he got a deal on that one. I think it might have been 30 or 40,
It was like
if I
30. It
recall.
was like 35 plus tax, something
Yeah,
like
something
that.
like that.
And I remember it was I guess a little quick. I mean, I bought mine, I think, from Amazon warehouse deals, and it was like $28 or something like that. But with Steven's copy, I was always going to Book Off, and I was looking, and then one day I saw it, I grabbed it, I saw the price, I sent him a picture on a Facebook Messenger. I was like, I pray to God he's awake, because if he's not awake, I'm just gonna buy the damn thing and worry about it later. But you were like, yes, and I was like, perfect. So then that was like a year ago, and now we're finally playing it.
Finally playing this thing. And I have to admit, it's one that, I mean, I've been looking forward to playing, but it is. It's one of those, I think it is a good seasonal game to pick up. Like, if it wasn't for this month of October, I don't know what would have finally inspired to pick up and play it because you can go online, and I got the wiki up for it right now with the average review scores and the Metacritics. It's a 60. People give it a 5 out of 10. I think the highest rating we have here is like a 7 out of 10. It's not the most well looked upon game, but we both, I think, had a deep interest in seeing, okay, what is this all about? From Software has achieved some milestone achievements now, especially with the Soul series, and people really highly look at the Kingsfield series in high regard. So it's cool to see their transformation through games. So I think we're both curious to see what this is all about.
And this is like a long-standing series too, which I mean, I think one of them is on PSN, and I think it's just called Echo Night. I mean, I looked it up, and it's like you're on a train, and it's like 1920s, like cross-country, like the Last Express sort of thing. I wasn't interested. Then I saw Shadow Tower, and I think Dustin was looking for that a while back, but
That was me at Too Many Games, that $50 copy, like the whole time at the expo. I'm like, oh, I want to get it, but $50. It wasn't on the list, uh, but
that looks
It's on
weird.
PSN as well. Everybody, that is on PSN as well.
That looks weird. And I don't mean weird like old school graphics weird. I mean like the whole premise this sounds very it sounds very From Software. Like very much like okay guys, we're all sitting down. It's like, all right, here's the premise of our new game. We're going to have a tower. but let's make it as screwed up as possible.
Yeah. All right. So, but you're right. Echo Knight did have the PS1 release, and then they had a sequel that came out in Japan only,
Of
that I can't
course.
even tell you the premise about. So I know you said the first one kind of took place on a train. I don't know what the second one did, but this
A
one actually.
plane.
Oh, I thought you said a train.
No, no, the first one was a train. I said maybe the second one was a plane.
Oh, okay. But the third one actually takes place in space, which I mean, I love sci-fi. So now you're mixing sci-fi with survival horror. Bring it on. Dead Space was one of my favorite games of all time.
That's a great game. I forgot about that too.
So yeah, that's going to be in my horror special since it was omitted from yours. But anyway, I figured we'd get things started by just kind of reading the back of the game. I know you said the video game dads did this in their episodes, so no mean to bite off of them. But I thought it would be cool to just say, since we're talking about a game in these minisodes, let you know what you're actually getting into. If you go into the store and you grab the box, you're going to get a picture. I almost get the vibes of what's the games that are out these days? The one David Cage ones you like?
Oh, the movie games like
Yeah.
Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain, Indigo Prophecy.
The cover has a strong sense like that. Like I just get like it's one of those David Cage game vibes looking at it. And it
Yeah,
almost
it
kind of
does.
is because it's not really an action game or nothing. It is really heavy in dialogue and we'll get
If
into it.
if you can find it.
Yeah. But it says in 2044, in the moon colony, a horrific crash has left you separated from your fiance, opening the door to the lunar colony. 239,000 miles away from Earth, you find a desolate base haunted by spectral remains of those who called it home. Prepare to embark on a paranormal journey to the beyond. And then in some like bullet points, it says you have fog, shadows, weightless gravity engulf you in and out of this world experience. Stunning environments and dynamic camera changes will leave you trembling in fear. Challenging puzzles and heart pounding exploration will take you to the edge and beyond. So that's what
Well,
you're getting into when you read this.
what a load of horse shit.
Yeah, I would say that when it comes to a survival horror game, which you would classify this, I guess, as a survival horror adventure game, I'd say, because
I
because in a
I
you're adventuring, but it's not action or anything. And the reason I would say survival horror is because you are kind of limited on resources, and we'll talk about that in the game. So that's the only reason I'd say that. What are you thinking?
I mean, when I first started playing it, like I originally walked in like, okay, this is a survival horror game. But considering like I mean, obviously survival horror games have puzzles, which this game does have. I was thinking of it at one point as more of a walking simulator
Well,
because you
it
spend
is
so
a
much
walking
time
simulator,
because you
yes.
spend so much time just going down strange corridors and then looking at the
Yes.
environment and then walking down another strange corridor and then looking at the environment and then having somebody go like and then something happens.
So what I'll do is I'll tell you everyone just a heads up. This will be a very spoiler heavy episode. And I think I've come to the realization like when we do a mini-sode on a game, they're probably going to be really spoiler driven because it gives us more to talk about. If we couldn't talk about certain things in this game, this would be a 10-minute long episode. So
Because
it's
nothing happens.
yeah. So it's good to have some dialogue between how we think the ending is, because we'll explain how the different endings we got. And I told Alex I kind of think I have a theory on what's happening with the game. So, and he probably wants to hear that. But in order to hear my theory, you will have to be spoiled on the game. But anyway, like I read on the back of the cover. It's all about this guy named Richard, and he's flying into space to locate his fiance. because he's going to be marrying her once they get there. But when he gets there, his shuttle crash lands and it kills a whole lot of people once it crashes into the ship. Now, what this does, it releases their spirits, or it creates these ghostly spirits in and around the base, and it's all about Richard exploring this site and trying to find Claudia and uncovering the mystery that's kind of happened. Did this crash turn everyone into these spirits, or is there something else that's going on? And while exploring this area, you're kind of having to free these spirits to clear the way. But that's pretty much the gist of the story. You meet a lot of different characters along the way. So, and I'll let Alex kind of explain how the gameplay kind of flows through this game. So I'll just let them know pretty basically how this game works. Other than it being a very good walking simulator, or a very not good one, depending on how you look at the game, how it plays out.
So, since we are going to be doing a lot of spoiler things, I think probably the one thing to look at first is the mechanics of how this game works.
Yeah.
You are walking around a lot, as Steven said. You're interacting with different ghostly spirits, and of course, it's as obtuse, abstract, and vague as From Software tends to do when it comes to storyline with Dark Souls and Demon Souls and pretty much anything they've ever touched. So you can definitely see how that style kind of evolved from this title, and it's probably happened in a few of the other ones. But looking at this, I was like, wow, it's very much Souls in the way it presents the story, but it's very obtuse in mechanically speaking. So
Yeah.
when the game opens, basically you're treated to some very quote unquote charming voice acting, on which the character Richard says, "We were going on a space trip," and then that's it. He doesn't mention anything about the fiance, the marriage coming, or anything. Like, it just doesn't say anything. You find all this out through your interactions with the environment, which is how From Software likes to do their stories. But you wake up, and obviously you're the only person alive on this spacecraft. There's like a destroyed android, and then you go upstairs, and there's a ghost who's just sitting there blocking his path, saying he needs his flask, otherwise he's not leaving. So I'm like, great. Apparently in the afterlife you could still be an alcoholic, but you have to look around the environment for this flask, and I kid you not, when I say this game is obtuse, I spent an hour looking for this damn flask. This is the first puzzle. There was only one room, and I couldn't find it. And I'm like, I'm an idiot. This is the first puzzle, the first 10 minutes of the damn game, and I can't even find the stupid thing.
Well, I don't want to cut you off any real quick, but I have to. When I first tried to play this game, I actually tested after I played Eternal Ring a few months back. I did want to play that next, so I put it in because Eternal Ring, another early From Software title, and when I put it in, a lot of game I put it on the emulator for my PC, the PCX2, whatever it's called, just because you can get the graphics that you can pull off with some PS2 games on that thing is just amazing sometimes. Like Dragon Quest 8, oh, it just looks beautiful on the emulator. But a lot of games have a lot of glitches with that emulator too if it's not set properly. And Echo Knight Beyond is one of those games that just does not work with that emulator. Because when I started the game, it was missing a lot of textures. And Alex, you could not even, the flask was not even there.
Oh
So when
my
I was playing the
god.
game and you and you said you were stuck, when he talked about that flask, I'm like, okay, there's a locked door behind you, and I've searched everywhere. I'm stuck already. There's nothing here. So I went ahead and looked at a guide, like, okay, where is this flask? What do I got to do? Oh, it's on one of the seats, right where you spawn at when you start the game.
Yeah,
And I'm
apparently he sat
looking,
next to you on the space trip, and you didn't
yeah,
even know.
I'm looking at the seat, and there's nothing there. I'm like, there's nothing here. But I hit X, and it said I picked up the flask. Now, fast forward to where I'm actually playing on my PS2. Oh, I can see a flask there. And since anyone, side note, hook your PS2 up with your PS3 composite cable because boy, oh boy, does it do wonders for the graphics and enhancing the visuals of your PS2 games. I know, Alex, you have that HDMI attachment device, which is probably just as good. But anyway, anyone who's not up on that tip, you need to do that because when I first booted this game up, trying to play on a flat screen TV like any PS2 game looks really blurry, and I mean it's just not made for that. But man, putting that HD composite cable on there, component cable, oh man, it just looks so good. So I just wanted to say that, and I could see the flask again. So yay, I could see what this item actually looked like that I couldn't see on the emulator.
Yeah, and a quick point on the cables too, because I know in today's day and age when everybody looks at frame meisters and everything else, even if you don't get the official Sony cables, which I recommend because they are the best, you can get a quote unquote decent Chinese knockoff off of Amazon for like $10. I personally have two sets and the official set. I can tell a difference. There isn't as much, I guess you could say, graphical noise, but the HDMI one essentially just plugs into your PS2 like a normal connection, and all it really does is just take those same color signals that would go through those particular cables. So it's not upresing it to like HDMI 1080p or anything. It's basically pulling the RGB signal and running it through an HDMI because not every television now has those composite cables in the back of them anymore.
Yeah.
So
And you're only getting 480 still, but I mean it cleans it up. It just cleans the picture up so good that it just makes them a lot easier to play.
and
Like
you
I
can read the
have,
text. You can
yeah,
actually read the
you can.
text.
So, but yeah, like Alex was kind of saying, basically the game is you're moving along and exploring this space area, this station, the crash site, and you're pretty much moving along until you run into another ghost. And this ghost will pretty much need you to find him or her an item for you to proceed past that ghost or further into the game that can unlock another piece or another area of the game you haven't accessed before. So it's pretty much like a fetch quest kind of game, eh? It's pretty lit,
Yeah,
the vibes I got from it.
I was kind of laughing because I was playing Yakuza before this, and I always joke like Yakuza Cosmic Kiryu is basically he has a heart of gold and all he does is solve everybody's problems, even though he has no reason to. Pretty much the same thing here. You're walking around and solving these dead people's problems. Um, a lot of it is very fetch questy too.
Yeah.
And even then, the cool part about it is there there's some interaction between the ghosts, and you get some backstory through and I'm jumping around a bit, through the cameras. If
You're
you
fine, yeah.
look at particular different areas, like you'll understand, like, oh, like this ghost was asking for some such thing randomly. It doesn't make sense. If you go in the cameras, you get to see the memory, and you understand, like, oh, that is why this particular ghost is looking for a pocket watch, for instance. I think it was a pocket watch. But you see in the memory why that is, and you get a lot of story just by the environment. Because otherwise, like giving these ghost things, it's basically just like, oh, this is them padding out the game. Like, no, there actually is a
Yeah.
reason behind it. You just have to, again, because it's from software, you have to go deep into that lore and try to figure out what you think happened. You could just
Yeah.
go through this whole game in like 3 hours. I'm convinced if you just run from point A to B, picking up what you need to pick up and just keep going. But if you actually take the time to explore everything and understand the motivations of these different ghosts, you get a much richer game, I think.
Yeah. It'll flesh out the story as much as it possibly can in a From Software game. But as far as like you were saying with those cameras, that's how the game kind of flows. Most of the time, you'll enter a new area of the station, and one of the first things in that area you'll see is an area called a monitor room, and that's what Alex was mentioning with the cameras. So the monitor room is your saves point area. It's like your little safe zone. Think Resident Evil. Nothing bad's going to happen to you in this monitor room. And what you can save your games, and then you can access the monitor, which will access different cameras throughout the section you are in. Now, these cameras function in two ways, kind of like Alex was saying with the memories. It gives you clues on to what you kind of need to be looking for in this area, or a general idea of an item or something you might need to get, like he brought up with the pocket watch. How the camera system works is you select a camera and it kind of lets you free roam throughout the area searching it. But if you see some green on the camera, you have to zoom into it and all of a sudden the memory will break out. And that's when you might see a pocket watch fall out of someone's pocket. And it's like, oh, this could be where the pocket watch is at that I need for the ghost who is in this other area. So this is why I need to grab it now. Then you get some backstory. The other use of the cameras is something we haven't mentioned in the game yet. We've told you about these spirits. There's some friendly spirits, but then there's some hostile spirits, and that's kind of where I guess they're trying to put the fear or the scare in you or the survival aspect because these hostile ghosts can kill you. Not by actually attacking you, but you pretty much give yourself a heart attack out of fear is what I'm getting from it because your health meter is pretty much your heart rate, or is what I'm guessing. Is that what it was, or was it blood pressure? I couldn't remember.
It was the heart rate.
Heart rate.
But yeah, it's kind of funny because I mean, they obviously took a nod from Silent Hill too, because the hostile ghosts only exist in areas with heavy duty fog.
Yeah.
And you pretty much know when you're in an area like, okay, it's only a matter of time before and then you hear the ooh, and then you just see this ghost literally just walk up to you. Like,
Yeah.
hey bro, what's going on? And all of a sudden your heart rate just goes through the roof. And there's nothing you can do to defend yourself except run out of the room.
Yeah.
And the cool
And
thing is, it's like you're not stuck with like a heart rate. I think if I think you die at 300,
yeah,
but if
that's
you're
it.
like at 250, we'll say, which is in and of itself, you should already be dead as far as I'm concerned. When you exit the room, as you calm down, your heart rate will gradually decrease. So it's not like, oh, you're stuck at 250 for the rest of the game. It will gradually decrease once you're out of danger. But if you're being attacked by a ghost and you're trying to make it to the exit and you're on the verge of death, you can literally, I guess, while running, just inject yourself with a tranquilizer
Yeah.
to bring yourself down a little bit. And you find these syringes throughout the game as well. There aren't that many though. Um, and you can
There's a
use
room.
that.
There's a room you can go back to where he'll supply you with one every once in a while. But other than that, yeah, there's not many scattered throughout the game.
Yeah, but I'd say like there aren't that many scattered throughout. But the other thing you have to keep in take into consideration too is your flashlight,
Yes.
because there's limited batteries and that thing will recharge over time very slowly. And I don't want to say, it's not like you need to put the flashlight on things to find them, but with the fog and the unfortunate graphic fidelity, you really need that flashlight to be able to see anything.
And there's some dark areas in the game. Like you're gonna need it for some areas. A lot of I say you could get through 60 to 65% of the game, no need to flashlight at all. But even having it on low light, there's two settings on it, low light or like bright. And even having it on low light in some areas is very helpful. So yeah, man, I never had a battery issue though. Like I couldn't even tell when it was losing charge because I felt
Oh.
like I was getting things everywhere.
I was running out of batteries. Like I would get the, oh, you need like batteries running low, and I would just turn it off.
Okay.
But there is one room, I forgot where, it's towards the end of the game, where there's literally just like 8 different batteries just chilling there.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah, I remember that. I remember opening like a closet and there was like four sitting in a closet. Like, hey, this is
Yeah, yeah. But the funny thing is the flashlight, despite the looking part, it no defensive function whatsoever. You have no defenses at all.
lights on, disappear, ghost. Nope, it's gonna keep coming. But
Yeah.
some of those, the hostile ghosts that you see in the room are actually some are actually the same friendly ghosts. You just need to clear the fog. That's the thing that we forgot to mention or hadn't gotten to yet. That we mentioned the fog in the rooms. So this same ghost that's trying to kill you, so to say, is actually the same ghost you're going to be needing to help once the fog gets cleared. So the main concept in a room, like I said, you'll go to a monitor room. The monitor will show you the locations of the ghosts in the area because you can see them on the camera. And in some areas, you kind of have to plan out your attack because you have to get to the ventilation system. So, in order to get to the ventilation system, there might be a little puzzle you got to do, or you might have to find a way to maneuver yourself around the hostile ghost without them attacking you and giving you a heart attack. As soon as you hit the ventilation system, it lets the fog out, and then you can talk to the ghost and figure out their story and how to progress.
Actually, that's another thing too. Even after a hostile ghost becomes friendly, or just friendly ghosts in general, you'll know when one's nearby because your heart rate will start to go up, so you have to talk to them before you have a heart attack.
Boom,
Which is
boom,
kind of funny
boom,
because
boom,
you're
boom,
like
boom.
you'll literally if you don't have the flashlight on, sometimes you have to really get up like right in their face to actually see them.
Yeah, they won't like form. Like
Yeah,
you can hear them kind of whimpering and talking, but you're like, where are you? Like I'm looking everywhere, and you gotta have to use your heart rate to judge how close you're getting to them.
yeah, and I forgot there was one ghost. I don't remember what he said exactly. He was a scientist, but it was like something like he was reprimanding his assistant or something. So in the back I was hearing like, Raymond, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And meanwhile your heart rate's like going through the roof, and he's like, what are you doing? Get over here! And you're like, oh my god, stop!
Raymond, help this guy. He needs you.
And then you get to him, he's like, you're not my assistant. It's like, no, you're a dead guy.
But see, that was one of the, I guess, one of the highlight factors for me. And we could be jumping all around here, but the spirit you find is could either be a highlight of the game or just a really corny part of the game because
Yeah.
I was trying to find a list of all of them somewhere, but since the game is so obscure, they just there's no one out there who has them all listed anywhere. But there's some pretty memorable ones you run into. Some of the cooler ones, I know a lot of the people you're helping is a whole like a space crew. They're in their space suits and they're all wondering where their captain is. So you're trying to figure out the story of why they're there. They're trying to find their captain, and you eventually lead them to helping find him. And it kind of like frees them all one at a time once that happens. And you're learning about this crew and how they might have died in the spacecraft or the station. And it was really cool because this captain, I don't know if you noticed, Alex, but it would always be the red haired guy wandering the halls,
Yeah.
spirit, and he wouldn't talk to you. And you're like, whoa, this guy came out of nowhere. He's not talking to me. And you don't know if he's hostile or not, but he's not attacking you. Then eventually, near the end of the game, oh, so you're the captain. And I mean, the little storylines that are kind of interconnected within it are pretty cool. So I kind of like that, like figuring out each their own little story.
And even some of them were like, I don't even want to say they're kind of silly. Like the one with the old lady who's looking for her cat.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is to find the cat actually helps you progress the game,
Yeah.
ironically, right?
This is what pay this I want people to pay attention to that. I think you should explain this one, Alex, because this is what we're talking about with this game and it being obtuse and not really you have to explore in this game. Like Alex was saying when you listen to his horror minisode that he did, do not use walkthroughs in horror games or games like this because a walkthrough is going to spoil everything. You're going to want to go into this and experience exploring this station and ship on your own and figuring out this stuff on your own. And this thing with the cat is one of the tougher ones, I think, in the game of figuring out what in the world am I supposed to do here because this makes no sense whatsoever to me how this all unfolds. So if you think you can explain it, Alex, I want you to explain the whole cat thing, then what the cat did afterwards that
Oh,
even progresses it further. if you
Okay.
remember. Okay.
Honestly, I think I found it by mistake. But
Okay.
yeah, and to that point too, it's like if you use a walkthrough, honestly, you'll beat this game in 3 hours. If you don't, it may take you twice as much.
It takes 6 hours. It's not very long at all, but
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, I was walking down the way, and my heart rate started to go up, and I'm like, "Oh boy, there's a ghost nearby, and I'm about to have a heart attack." And it's this old woman who's crying that she can't find the last uh, piece of family that she has. And I'm thinking, "Oh, it must be a kid." And I'm like, "No, it's probably a pet because we haven't had, the token animal cameo yet." But you can't progress past her or anywhere in the story until you find out where this cat is or this pet. And I'm wandering around literally, just going in any which door I can, and the map system in this game really doesn't help you either. It kind of just says, like, you're here, but it doesn't tell you where, so you have no idea if you're facing north, south, east, or west. And eventually I just wandered into, like, this little hallway, um, which was like a shuttle, and all of a sudden my heart rate starts to go, and I'm
wait,
like,
hold up, rewind. Before you go into the shuttle room, you enter a kind of waiting area for the shuttle, and
oh,
there's
yes, yes, yes.
okay.
Yeah, you walk into this waiting area for the shuttle, and there's music playing, and you're
That
kind of,
was eerie music, by the way, too. Like they did a good job of how they hit that song, I think, with that music box. But go ahead.
yeah. Now imagine me playing that at 4 in the morning with my surround sound headphones on. I literally, I think I threw them off and I took a lap around the living room before I proceed. As I played this game exclusively at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning because I was up and had nothing better to do except scare myself before work. Um, more than normal. But yeah, so this particular area, like you walk in and this music is playing, and I saw where the music box was, but you can't do anything about it,
Yeah,
and
I saw it too.
it just keeps playing, and you're like, at this point, I'm like, all right, there's obviously a jump scare in here. So I walked around circles for maybe a good 10 minutes. I'm like, why aren't I triggering the jump scare? Why aren't I triggering the jump scare? Oh my god, let's just get this over with. Give me the jump scare. It never came. So I go into the shuttle, and my heart rate starts going through the roof in one of the back areas, and I can't figure out what's going on. And eventually I just click on the bed, and there's the cat just hanging out. This dead cat.
And I'm going to stop you right there too, real quick, because like you said, you just clicked. And I don't even remember my heart rate even be that high. I could hear the meowing.
Yeah,
I
you
could
hear
hear
the
the
meowing.
meow, and I could not see the cat. I know it's an older game. Maybe there was a faint outline of the ghost of the cat on the bed, but if it was there, I could barely make it out. Like I was just hitting X. I was mashing X while walking through it, and
See,
that's how I got the cat.
yeah, see now the crazy thing with the cat is you're like, yeah, I found the cat, and then you're like, you get no prompt like picked up dead cat or anything like that.
Yeah,
So
you don't.
so it's like how do we get him now? If you spoke to the woman a few times and listened to her a bit more, she you would have been able to go into her bag and get this bell because the cat will respond to the bell.
Hmm.
So if you did all that, or if you didn't, you ran back to go do it after hearing this. You ring the bell, all of a sudden the cat will follow you around. Perfect. You can bring the cat back to its owner. When you walk back through the shuttle thing, the cat runs to the music box and swats it out from under the chair that it's in.
I just thought that was so random.
Yeah,
Like the
and it's
cat
totally
swats the
unexpected.
yeah.
It's totally unexpected. There's no lead up, no like indication like or hint saying like, if a small dead furry creature were to get under here, we could get to the mutant. None of that. So you go back to the lady. She takes the cat. She thanks you for returning her family, and then she yells at you because she wants to know if you heard him. I'm like, he's dead. He's already hurt.
Yep.
And then they oh, and that's one thing we didn't mention. When you do free a ghost, which is what they call this, they basically do the praise the sun motion, and then they
Yes,
fade
they do.
away into space. And it's
Yes, they
like
do.
it's kind of funny too because you see him. It's like it's Solaire, and then it's like he's gone.
It would have been awesome if we saw the cat do it, like spread
Oh
its
my
paws out.
god! It's like "Meow."
And another side note to that too with the ghost, while just because we're talking about freeing them, there's an area in the game called the studio, which kind of plays an important role. It's where you can get the extra syringes if you need. You meet a character in the game who takes you to the studio, and he tells you he's trying to paint a masterpiece in it. So when you go into the studio, it looks like a nice fielded area painted on the wall. And every time you free a spirit, he paints their portrait on the wall. So that's a room you kind of go back to, and you see all the ghosts you have freed throughout your journey in the game.
And that room itself, in and of itself, is also kind of eerie
Yeah, it is.
because you're basically in this field, and then there's this dude just chilling right in the middle of it. And when he paints the portraits, they're like these shades of, I want to say purplish gray, so they look like corpses. I want to say like they look like cadavers. Like all the colors drained out. So,
Yeah.
so it's kind of off-putting. You're like, oh, okay. Maybe he doesn't have any other colors. Oh, the table has tons of colors. Oh dear. But it's one of those things. It's like it's obviously put in there to kind of unnerve you at first, but as you progress through the game, and particularly towards the end, that room, like it makes sense why it's there and why
Yeah.
this dude is here. Because yeah, obviously you're wandering around the space station, everybody's dead. It's like, so how come he's still here, and why the hell hasn't he gotten off this rock yet?
And what was crazy about the cat quest, I guess you could say again, is that that whole you would have never known he was going to knock the music box
Oh
out
yeah,
because the music box leads to its own little a spirit needs that. I think that might have been a spirit you actually there's some spirits you don't need to free in the game. It's just if you want to get like 100% true ending, you have to free all the spirits. And it's like if you never would have, it just you don't. I don't see how the two would have ever connected. Like, oh wow, the cat's gonna knock the music box out because you're gonna need the music box for another spirit. But what on earth is it too much for you to bend down and pick it up because you can see it there, but you can't bend down and pick it up. You need the cat to swat it out. It was
yeah.
just so random.
And even the ghost that gets the music box, you wouldn't know which one was going to get it, or was supposed to get, unless you check the cameras. So
Yes.
here's another slight spoiler. Slight. When you're walking down this corridor, you get like this nice lunar view,
Yeah.
and while you're looking out the window to a certain point, some dead astronaut literally just walks up to the window and starts banging on it. Like,
Yeah.
but not aggressively, kind of like, hey, hey, like, look at me. And then next to him is a very crude map of where you need to go for the next section. And it's like, who the hell is this? Like, what is he doing here?
That
You,
was one of the cooler ghost reveals, in my opinion, though. Like,
yeah,
if
I
you were
think
just
so.
like strafing to the left and all of a sudden you see this ghost walking up and pounding, it was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool, but when you find out, like, he's actually the one who gets the music box.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense until you find it in one of the memories where I think it was his sister who gave him the music box because he freaks out and he gets like anxiety attacks and the music from the music box calms him down.
I can't remember.
It was something like that. But I remember like hearing that and going like, "Oh yeah, meanwhile this music nearly made me shit myself." So apparently so apparently this guy is like there's something wrong with him. But when you give it to him, he takes it, he kind of acknowledges you, and then he just walks away.
Yep.
Like with nothing. Just walks away in the distance and he basically fades out. And then you see the music box kind of just floating around without anybody.
Yeah.
But then
Uh,
later in the game, much later in the game, when you're actually on the lunar surface, there's a ghost chilling in a corner, like he's kind of like he's given up. The ghost with the music box comes up to him, and he basically helps him get up so that he can, be freed.
yeah.
So there's like this whole and you don't need to free this second ghost, but it's kind of
It's a
cool just
chain
to,
reaction.
yeah, exactly. You see everything is interrelated between all these like astronauts, the colonists, and then the space crew. And there's even like a whole overarching story between the girl and the captain on that space crew. If you take the time to
Yeah.
go through all of it.
That's what, and since I mean we're in this is a spoiler episode, so I'm gonna be getting in that to when I explain it that part. But yeah, it's just crazy. Like that. That's how the game kind of flows. Gameplay wise, it's kind of like what Alex was saying. It is a walking simulator because you're not doing any combat with anything. You're just collecting items, making sure you don't have a heart attack. Which that was the kind of survival horror aspect I was putting in because you're limited on the syringes. So in that aspect, you are kind of limited on stuff. So survival per se, but it's nothing's ever scary in the game. But to me, the game still what makes a good horror game to me or survival horror game. It's not about the jump scares or gore or blood everywhere. I like a good atmosphere, and I think the game, all in all, had a really good atmosphere. Like I love the setting it was in. I love the space setting. I think From Software did a great job on designing this station because, like every From Software game that I've played, how they have everything just interconnected, how you can explore through everything without a load screen. I don't know if you noticed that or not, because I mean, unless you got a little cutscene or not, you're just walking through everything, and it's just really cool, like how they interconnected and the atmosphere they created. Because it is you're by yourself exploring this. I like that about it.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed that as well too. And it like I said, like playing this I'm like, "Oh, okay, I could see how this happened in Demon Souls. Oh, yeah, I can see where they took this style." And I looked up the crew. I looked up the team that worked on it, and it's a lot of guys from the Dark Souls team.
Yeah.
So it's really cool just to see that. Like I don't want to say look at this crude entry, but it's like look at like with Dark Souls 3, which is I'd say is my favorite and is probably the most mechanically sound. You see such like I don't even want to say improvement. You see an evolution. Like they've really they people say, "Oh no, they've refined the style in Dark Souls 2 and 3." It's like, "No, they've been working to refine it since when did this come out? Like 2006?"
Yeah. I mean, Shadow Tower, all those were. So I think Shadow Tower was designed the same way. I plan on trying to play that this month so I can let people know later on if it is connected as good. But yeah, this was released in 2004 in Japan. We didn't get it till 2005. So a while they've been developing this style.
Yeah, and it's just really like as a fan of From Software, it's just really cool to see that. Like to play one of their older titles. But I'm at the same time, you also have to go into this, even if you're a fan. Remember, this is a very, I don't want to say early PS2 game, but a very
Yeah.
mechanically old
Yeah.
PS2 game. It's very clunky. It's very, you move like a tank, and I don't mean tank controls. I mean, like, literally, Richard must weigh, like, I'll say 140 pounds soaking wet, and he moves like he weighs 900 pounds.
Because they move faster than Kingsfield, but you can tell this is the same people who made it. Because in Kingsfield, you walk like a slug, and in this game, it's a little bit faster than a slug, but it's and how the game lets you run, but if you run, it'll increase your heart rate. So you run the risk of getting a heart attack faster if you run into a ghost if you run. So, but walking is so slow. Oh, it's so slow.
It's very painful. It's
And a great mechanical thing they needed in this game, which I mean, I had my good share of heart attacks in the game. Don't get me wrong. I had the heart attack a lot in the game, but a simple button to do a quick spin, like in Resident Evil
Yeah.
series, would have been very much welcome because you turn slower. You think if you walk slow, doing a turn, you can't adjust the sensitivity, you turn slow, and it can be annoying.
You know what? Actually, speaking of turns and whatnot, that one ghost with the kid who sits on your shoulders.
Which was a pretty cool thing I think they did too, like how that all worked out. Yeah.
So when that happened, when he basically what happens is you find these two girls and they're talking about their brother and they can't find their brother and they bought him a toy for his birthday. I think it was a stuffed lion.
Hmm.
And then there's another corridor you go down. You hear a kid giggling, and you're like, oh god, oh god. And then all of a sudden you get these two massive handprints right on the visor of your spacesuit, like
Yeah.
on either side. So I tried to spin around to find it or where this was coming from, and I spent so much time trying to spin around looking at all the different areas, I had a heart attack. And that and that was it. But
Wow.
later on, there's another puzzle where basically there's a dirty mirror, and you basically spray some Windex on it, and then you see the kid's been sitting on your shoulders the whole time, and that's why you haven't been able to find him.
Yep. So I thought because you picked up the like the cleaning stuff earlier in the game, you're like, what am I gonna do with this? And then eventually you're like, oh, there's something on my shoulders, and you wind up going to a bathroom and there's some mirror. Let's see if it works. And sure enough,
But no indication of any of this. Like literally, you just happen in there and you're like, oh, I can click on this, and it's like it appears to be dirty, and then you're like, oh,
which that is a little cool thing they have in this game. There's a lot of stuff like exploring the areas. If you're just looking at it, there might not be an interactable object on it, but if you look at it, kind of like Resident Evil style, it'll give you a little bit of information. There's papers scattered throughout the desk showing that they might have been working on blah blah blah. And there's stuff on the walls like if they're working on something, you'll see notes on the wall that if you can zoom in enough, you'll be able to read what the notes are saying. So little touches like that are in the game too, which is a good touch.
but I think beyond the little personal vignettes you get with the ghosts, like the overarching story gets a little, I don't know, fantastical, and
Yeah,
it's
it's a
kind
little
of
strange.
it's kind of funny too because it's kind of similar to Dead Space One. Actually, well, Dead Space in general, but it's kind of similar.
It kind of is. Should we go into our endings then and share that then?
Let's talk about like this whole overarching thing, and then we'll get to the endings.
All right, go for it.
So basically, you're on the space station for your honeymoon, marriage, whatever thing, and there's a corporation there, the evil corporation, and they basically find this red stone that generates a tremendous amount of oxygen. And
Yeah.
obviously, as a corporation, they're going to try to capitalize on it and market it the best they can. However, during their research into the stone, they discover it grants wishes, apparently.
Yeah.
and, and in order to grant a wish, it has to kill something.
Yeah.
So that leads you to think, did somebody from this corporation make such a wacky wish that it killed the entire shuttle of people coming to the moon? Because that's what I think happened.
Well, it makes you wonder if that was just a stupid dream anyway, because did the wish actually ever come true that he wished for? Like, I don't think it did. So that's another thing. So some of the stuff doesn't get explained, but yeah, this red stone's kind of like the key. And what Alex was talking about earlier with our studio room, you kind of meet a guy. His name is Kenneth, and he tells you that he's an android on the ship, and that's why he's still alive, that he's not dead yet. And he's the one who goes back to the studio room and says he's painting the masterpieces. Well, it turns out Kenneth was the actual really close friend of the captain, and the captain killed him to get the wish granted that he wanted. And the wish he wanted was for his base, just for the station to achieve glory and be successful. That's what he wanted. So he kills Kenneth with the stone, and it kind of looks like the opposite happened because everyone died on the ship. Like there was no glory for the station because he kills Kenneth. And near the end of the game, once you kind of start putting everything together, you go into the studio room and you see that Kenneth is now on the wall. So he was not an android; he was a living person, and he was the final person to actually go on my wall as part of the portrait to complete it. So that's kind of how the story went. This guy. So then it gets on to the ending, concluding area with all this redstone stuff. So you want me to explain what I think is kind of had happened, or what?
Yeah, you explain what you think, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Okay, so I guess by all accounts, I got the true ending of this game because I saved all the
You did. I looked it
ghosts
up. You did.
and I did things in the right order because I think there's three or four different endings in the game, and there's a final room you can explore in the station before you go to the final area of the game to finish it off. And in this room, you see a body in the room, and he's painting a portrait of Claudia, the wife you're looking for. So I'm thinking two things at this time. I'm like, dead body, there's Claudia, there's a ring on the table and a note. I was getting the vibe that, hey, this is me, Richard. I was already on the ship and I died and I'm painting a portrait of my wife. But things come clear. And I think you actually told me, you're like, no, wait, I think that was the captain in the room. And you're right, because the captain had a fondness for Claudia. The captain wanted Claudia too. So he was painting pictures of her down in his basement. So the captain is, of course, dead. So he's sitting in his little area all on his lonesome. And you can either pick up the letter and the ring. And when you go to the final area is where you actually run into Claudia, her spirit. And depending on what you do in the game, it tells you what happens from there. I actually you can choose to show her the letter if you have it, and then she'll give you a chance with this red stone. She tells you that she killed herself so she could see you again, Richard. She wanted to see you. She also told me in my ending that I was an android on the ship, that I was not real. So I was coming on the ship as an android to explore to find her. So she gives you the choice to take this red stone or not. And I refused it. I refused the stone. And she said some kind of nice stuff like I always knew this was the you that I knew, blah, 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 and it frees her spirit. I walk behind this fountain. There is her body. I take her body to a coffin and I launch it off into space. And that's the end. Now, the way I see it, they said the stone grants wishes, Alex, correct? That's what it's
Mm-hmm.
said to believe. I kind of think Richard had died already a while ago. And she was on this ship already. The captain was fond with her. I think she was gonna actually do something with the captain because she found out Richard died. And she wanted to be with Richard again and her wish come true. That's why she literally killed herself so she could be dead with him. That's what I was thinking happened.
Okay. So
Now
with
you can explain what you're
yeah.
ending if you
So
want.
my ending. I didn't go down to do all the wackiness to get the true ending until after I got the normal ending, which basically you go into the room and she goes, "Oh, Richard, I got to see you again. I'm so happy. Yes, the redstone grants wishes, and I had used it to wish to see you again." And then you're given the option to take it or not. I chose to take it. So she goes, "Okay, just remember the stone has to consume life in order to grant a wish." So she disappears. So you go behind this statue that is directly behind the ghost, actually, and there's her body in her wedding gown, which is weird in and of itself. So
Yeah.
Richard looks at her. I'm presuming he gets a little bit emotional. He looks up at the earth, which is a hologram above it. And then, while staring at that, you see his arm come up with the red stone, and he stabs himself in the chest. And then he, looking at her, and then it fades to black, and then you get credits. And when that happened, I thought three things. One, did he wish to go home? Which would make sense because a lot of people have said in movies, like, I'm ready to go home, and then they pass away, which kind of made sense. Two, it made me think of Romeo and Juliet because the end of the whole thing, the two of them kill each other. So that kind of made sense. And then the third thing was I must have missed something, which is what made me go back and try to get the actual true ending because I was like, this, it made no sense. And I just, at the end of it, my personal belief is Kenneth, I still think is an android. I think that by freeing him, it's not that the android is freed, because the whole purpose of the painting is to capture memories, and once the memories are done, the ghosts go away. So because you realized what had happened to Kenneth, his memory's finished, so it goes away. So the android just paints it and goes off somewhere. Because it could have been anybody, essentially, I think. But in the case of Richard, they also mention in some of the lore and the backstory that Claudia was a robotics engineer or something. So who's to say that she didn't make the android of Richard in the first place?
Okay.
So she could have just, like, when she found out that he was dead, she wished for the android to come to the moon to release her. And then the android does so and obviously survives the crash because of it, and then frees her and then kills himself. Or in the case of your ending, he sends her off into space, right? Like a
Yeah.
burial by in space.
Yeah.
Which
Now
I also want to mention, they ruined that in the freaking opening of the damn game.
they do.
They show you the ending cutscene in the opening trailer. It makes no sense.
No, I just looked something up here though. I think could it kind of hits with what I was saying, and I didn't realize this because I was kind of right but kind of wrong. It turns out in one of the endings, Claudia tells you that in the that basement room where you get the letter where I was saying that was the chief. It says it turns out we were the chief. Richard was the
Oh.
chief. So Richard did die.
Oh.
So the real Richard was dead. So I guess that could kind of lean to kind of like I was saying. Um, so she wanted to kill herself so she could like see him again, be with him again. And us being the android, I guess we finally were able to free her spirit so she could see her again, so to say. Because
See,
she,
and I
but
thought it
then
was
she
like a
saw
whole
the
affair
android.
thing.
Me too, but it turns out the chief was Richard. So that kind of opens my eyes now to everything. So Richard was the one who made the wish on
Oh,
the base.
so it's all interconnected.
Richard killed Kenneth, and I don't think Kenneth was an android. I think he was a real person.
I
Well,
think he was an
you
android.
can keep the android theory though, so that's cool. You can have two different opinions. It's okay in this world, people. And so, Kenneth's not
Whoa,
an android.
whoa.
Get too deep here. So, I have to think that he is real because of just his spirit getting released. But I can understand where you're coming from with the memory thing. Like you think the android could just wandered off in the spaceship.
We went on a space trip.
My work here is done, and he walks off.
I am working on my masterpiece. Please, behold my masterpiece. The voice acting in this game, guys, is terrible.
Yeah.
I can't even begin. There's typos in the dialogue that's written. Some of the characters you can even hear the voice actors like they can't believe they're reading this. Like they have that sort of tone. Like it's like my music box.
Yeah, because some of the ghosts, like there are some good ghost scenarios, and there's others where Alex posted something on his Instagram about it, about you just feeding a guy chocolate to get him to move. So there's some bizarre ones in there too. The game is all over the place with those, but all in all, what are your final impressions or thought on the game? Would you recommend people play it? What's your final say on it?
Okay, so I'm gonna preface this by saying I am happy I got to play this game. I think it was definitely an interesting experience. I would not recommend it unless you know very well much what you're getting into. I was expecting a survival horror game, like we'll say a traditional quote unquote survival horror game. I knew there was ghosts. But I was expecting a lot of jump scares. I really didn't expect like this whole atmospheric experience that you get with like a walking simulator, even though it does have some survival horror aspects to it. Uh, I I don't even know if I want to give it a number per se, but I would say it's not worth the 80, $100 or whatever it is. If you can get this for
Yeah.
30, $40, I think it's worth the price of admission. I don't think this is like one of the greatest survival horror games ever made, but I think if you take the time to explore it thoroughly, you'll get more bang for your buck, if that makes sense.
I got you. I think for me, at the because we're playing it in 2017. I think at the time in 2005 when it came out, or sorry, 2004, we would have. I don't know how I would have received it because back then the survival horror I was used to was Resident Evil, having a gun, shooting things, shooting zombies. So going into a game where I'm just walking around and kind of just talking to people, I'm going to be honest with you, I probably would have hated it back then. But the gamer I am today, coming from some of my favorite horror games out there, are the ones that are just such a great atmospheric experience, like Soma and the Amnesia games. And those in themselves are basically walking simulators. And I love those games. So this game really hit that point for me because it is the type of game that I like with that atmosphere. Um, the things that hold it back for me are the clanky controls. The initial control scheme, I gotta tell you guys, if you go in there on the control scheme it has, you're gonna want to shoot yourself in the foot. Do yourself a favor and change it to control scheme C because it'll feel like you're playing a regular first-person shooter at least then. At least you can use the thumbsticks to look and everything. Um, like the From Software way with the obtuse story, I kind of dug that. I like the way you could explore the ship, how it really made you need to explore the ship. But could I recommend it for someone? Like Alex said, just know what you're getting into. I think the review scores got it right with the sixes. Um, but it's a six that I'm glad that I played because I'll remember this game. It's a memorable game. I won't forget playing this game, whether it's for good reasons or bad reasons. But for the most part, I enjoyed my time with it. I wasn't like beating myself over the head like, why am I playing this game? Will I ever play it again? Probably not. It's not something I look at replaying. But I'm happy I played it. Like I'm happy I experienced it. At $35, I'm glad, or 40, whatever I had to give you for it. I don't regret my investment into it. Um, I think it's a cool piece of gaming history because it's like one a lot of people don't talk about. So in that aspect, it's awesome. But I think they got it right with the six. I'd give it a 6.5, almost a seven. It's leaning close to a seven for me.
Yeah, and you see, I think that's another thing too, and I mentioned this only because I saw a tweet from Pat the NES Punk the other day. Um, with the release of the SNES Classic, everybody has decided to go out and review Star Fox 2.
Yeah.
And it's not getting as many great reviews as you would think. And he actually tweeted out, you can't review a game like Star Fox 2 in a 2017 mindset because it'll always be inferior if you think about it. So,
I
looking
heard
at
one reviewer comparing it to Star Fox 64, which
yeah,
you're not allowed to do.
no,
Star Fox 64 didn't exist.
yeah, you can't. You can't. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So with something like this, like looking back at like that 2004, 2005 mindset, the controls may have been perfectly acceptable back then. Graphically, I think this probably would have been like creme de la creme, like, late PS1, early PS2, where there was kind of like, the resolution, the textures really weren't up to, like the character models weren't up to snuff back then, which is
Yeah.
probably why they're all kind of like fuzzy and whatnot to give that illusion to kind of tone it up a bit. But thinking about that, like this probably could have been a technical marvel back then.
Yeah.
So it's like as much as I go, oh, the graphics really aren't that great. I'm not saying the graphics ruin the experience. It's like the revisionist history, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think in terms of the walking simulator comparison I've been making, that really didn't exist back then either. I mean, the first one I played was Dear Esther, and I think that came out like 2008 or 9 or something like that. So back then, the 6.5, 6.5, whatever it got, to me is like a perfectly acceptable score. Do I think it would have scored higher now that there are more walking simulators? No, because then people would have said, "Oh no, it's clanky and janky and blah 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 blah." So
Yeah.
that's why I say it's like you have to know what you're getting into and take it with a grain of salt. I mean, I'm happy I played it, but I wouldn't recommend it because I know it's going to draw those comparisons.
Yeah.
Watch a Let's Play, worst case.
Yeah, it's pretty short. Like you said, 3 or 4 hours and it'll be done. So we spoiled everything for you anyways if you listen to this.
They're all dead. That's
But I think go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, but that's pretty much it, I guess. I
Yeah,
am kind of interested to look into the first one now, to be
me too.
honest. But I
I
think
could have thought you had. I thought you bought the first one.
I almost did.
Okay.
I think I had it in my hand. And I looked at the back, and yeah, freaking hypocrite over here. I went, "Ugh, it looks like garbage," and I put it down. I don't know. I'm pretty sure. Actually, I'm gonna look up how much Beyond uh, Echo. I want to see how much it goes for these days. $72. You can get disc only for 32.70. Yeah,
Yeah.
not about what it used to be.
So a steal, half price, what I got. So I'm happy with that. So
Echo Knight on the PS1 is well, the Japanese one's $10. Um,
hey,
US actually like 60. Damn,
dang. So.
damn it. It's from the wonderful people at Age Tech.
Oh man. But unbelievably, we actually managed to talk about this game for I think over an hour. So we were afraid this was going to be a very short minisode, and once again, we went far past our expectations. So I think that about wraps it up, man.
Yeah, I think so too. Check it out if you're so inclined. I guess.
Yeah,
I think this was a good October game.
we put this out there for people to make their own judgment whether they want to or not. So even though we spoiled everything for you, if you still want to venture into it, give it a go.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard not to. I mean, Final Fantasy 12 is a little bit easier because there's so much stuff to talk about. While with this, it's like you're walking down a hall, you interact with ghosts, game finished. Like, after that,
Yeah.
it's kind of you have to get into why you want to interact with these ghosts, why you really want to explore, why you don't want to just pull up a walkthrough and just beeline right to the end.
And explaining like the cat quests and stuff, it helps explain some of the craziness in the game of just what happens.
Yeah, to put it lightly.
But we appreciate everyone listening. Again, stay tuned for more hopefully October fun this month. And Alex, it was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure for me as well. Thank you for recommending this game for us to indulge in or something.
No problem. No problem. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.